Hello and welcome to my video proposal for my research project, investigating EFL learners' perspectives on the use of singular they with the antecedent clauses in its context. So, uh, in standardized English, there's still much controversy regarding which pronoun to use when referring to a singular genderless antecedent. In particular, the pronoun they, used in the singular, has been used to refer to an individual with unknown gender since the 14th century, and is now commonly used as the personal pronoun of people who do not identify as male or female. Furthermore, the use of singular they is becoming more and more accepted in formal writing in English-speaking countries. While there have been several studies focusing on Vietnamese EFL students' viewpoints on English pronouns, the majority of them do not or only briefly mention singular they. As the Vietnamese language's equivalent of they is not widely used to refer to a single person, EFL learners may struggle with the concept of singular they. In addition, it is possible that certain factors, such as antecedent types and formal or informal contexts, may impact the perspectives of students regarding singular they. Therefore, a study on the viewpoints of EFL students regarding the influence of antecedent types and contexts on singular they at Concord University will help provide theoretical foundations for future research projects investigating the use of English pronouns in Vietnam. Furthermore, the study will provide accurate and factual data for use in updating syllabuses regarding pronouns in English language courses. Let's move on to the next part, literature review. So, several academic journals and articles assert that the use of they as a singular and genderless pronoun is not a new phenomenon. According to an online article written by Bear in 2018 that provided a comprehensive analysis of the history of singular they, the origin of this manner of pronoun use dates back to the 14th century. Specifically, the Oxford English Dictionary identified the first recorded use of singular they to be in a medieval romance poem called William and the Werewolf. Bauholm, 2004, reviewed various historical records to create a hypothesis on the manner and the time that singular they was introduced into the English language. Then, after cross-examining his hypothesis with other historical records, he concluded that singular they had entered the vocabulary of English after the 13th century, which was when grammatical gender fell out of use. Bodine, 1975, conducted a study on singular genderless English pronouns and changes on their use throughout history. She asserts that increasing acceptance of singular they was motivated by a disapproval of the use of generic he by the feminism social movement. In addition, she argued that the aversion towards singular they of the experts in the field of English grammar was prompted by socially related reasons. Notably, the author claims that singular they was used widespread by English speakers prior to the prescriptive grammar movement. So, the perception of singular they among English language speakers and learners have been explored by many different studies. Stormbaum, 2020, examined how L1 and L2 English speakers utilize gender-neutral third-person singular pronouns can be influenced by features of the antecedent, namely definiteness, notional number, and gender expectancy. A total of 338 university students were surveyed using an online elicitation experiment comprising of a closed test, a sentence completion test, and a text completion test. The results of the study reveals that singular they was used more commonly when there are notionally plural antecedent and less often when gender stereotype antecedent were present. In addition, the author also found that L1 English speakers tend to consider singular they to be a singular pronoun, while other groups perceive it as a modification of the plural they. The study, 2016, investigated the use of pronouns in response to questions including a singular genderless referent. Participants of the study included 38 adult male and female native English speakers from the United States. They were asked questions that prompted responses to use pronouns to refer back to the antecedent, before being directly inquired on their views regarding gender-neutral pronouns. During the analysis process, the author cross-referenced the answers of both sets of questions for each participant to find contradictions between the two. He found that a majority of the answers for the first set contained singular they, and a notable number of answers to the second set contradicted the first. However, most of the inconsistent answers in the second set use singular they. The author concluded that a majority of the participants do use gender-inclusive pronouns, although singular they was the most popular. Brown, 2018, examined potential difficulties affecting communicative effectiveness and meaning processing caused by the use of singular they when referring to non-human animals. A total of 19 L1 English speakers from Japan were interviewed as part of this study. They were asked to read an online article that uses singular they to refer to a generic dog rather than the more traditional pronoun it. Then the participants were requested to summarize the article, point out grammatical flaws, and then participate in a semi-structured interview regarding their views on gender-neutral pronouns. The results of the study indicates that none of the participants noticed the article's use of singular they, nor did they experience any difficulty when summarizing the text. However, many of the participants disapprove of the manner that singular they was used in the article. Speyer and Schrieb, 2018, investigated whether non-native English speakers have problems processing singular they. The participants in their studies were 52 university students whose native language was German and had an English proficiency level of at least B2. The authors had the students do a reading exercise before comparing their performance to a similar study that used data collected from native speakers. It was found that students processed singular they without any issue when the antecedent is an indefinite pronoun or neutral. However, B2 English speakers do struggle when the antecedents are stereotypically masculine or feminine. Overall, the studies regarding perception of singular they that I have examined all show that a majority of the participants had positive views regarding the use of this pronoun. So, while the use of singular they is now generally accepted among people from English-speaking countries, there still exist controversies regarding this pronoun. Dahl, 2013, expressed the view that sentences using singular they are syntactically unpleasant and advocated for increased use of distinct pronouns for those purpose of specificity. She suggested that in cases where the antecedent are singular and gender ambiguous, writers should use generic he, generic she, or rewrite the sentence to pluralize it instead. In an online article written by McWhorter, 2021, he responded to readers who disagreed with the views expressed in his previous article, which advocated for the use of singular they. The author mentioned three main arguments and responded to them. First, he replied to a reader suggesting that the use of singular they is currently being forced on people rather than naturally adopted. McWhorter put forward that the English language has already undergone changes not brought about by natural causes, such as the change from black to African American as the popular word to use when referring to Americans of African descent. The next argument is that the use of singular they is counterintuitive to the natural differences between men and women. The author responded by referencing cultures that have pronouns for people who are not male or female in their native language, such as the Zapotec community in Mexico, the indigenous Tahitians, and the Hawaiians. The last argument mentioned by the author is that rising use of singular they will lead to the complete denial of sex and gender differences by society in general. He responded that he considers such a situation to be so far outside the limits of the conventions of linguistics that is unfeasible. So let's move on to the next talk, the research methodology that this study will employ. This study will be conducted using a purely quantitative approach. The data is expected to answer three research questions. How do EFL learners view the concept of singular they? Does different antecedent affect EFL learners' view of singular they, and does formal and informal context affect EFL learners' view of singular they? These questions are mainly related to trends in the study's target demographic. As such, quantitative research methodology is ideal because it will allow me with numerical data will provide me with numerical data from which I can derive factual statistics. This will then allow me to closely examine patterns in data sets and subsequently derive objective conclusions on the trends of my research participants' views regarding singular they. The participants for this study will consist entirely of students from the 44 course enrolled in the High Quality English Studies program. They will be asked to answer an online survey created via Google Form. Let's move on to the design of the questionnaire. So, the questionnaire will consist of 19 questions in total. For each of the first 14 questions, the participants will be presented with sentences that uses singular they to refer back to an antecedent. Then, the survey takers will be asked to rate how much they agree with the notion that the sentences were grammatically correct on a 5-point Likert scale. Notably, for the 13 and 14 questions, the participants will be shown the same sentences and will be asked to rate grammaticality when the sentences are used in a formal and informal context. Now, Stormbaum 2020 employed a research methodology that involved examining antecedent types. In particular, she examine definiteness, notional number, and gender stereotypes. Her study has inspired me to do the same. However, instead of using gap-filling exercises like she did, I will be asking my research participants to rate the grammaticality of sentences using singular they on a 5-point Likert scale. For example, the sentence the firefighter is rescuing people from a burning building. I want to be as heroic as them someday. The antecedent the firefighter is a definite pronoun, has a singular notional number, and is stereotyped as male. So the following is a table summarizing all of the different antecedents that will be present in my questionnaire. For the antecedent types, I will be including indefinite noun phrases, indefinite pronouns, definite noun phrases, and quantificational noun phrases. For notional number, I will be examining singular and plural antecedents. And for gender stereotypes, I will be using male, female, and gender-neutral stereotype antecedents. Now, the 15th question will ask the survey takers what pronouns they use when referring to a singular genderless noun in a formal context. The 16th question will be a repeat of the 15th question, but will instead ask what pronoun to use in an informal context. For the 17th question, the participants will rate on a 5-point Likert scale whether they agree with or disagree with the statement. Formal and informal contexts influence your views regarding singular genderless pronouns. The survey takers will have the option to give an explanation of their opinions for questions 15 to 17. Questions number 18 and 19 will respectively ask participants whether they have heard of the concept of singular they prior to this survey, and if so, where did they learn of this use of pronoun. All data will be collected and then analyzed using the statistical package for the social science, or SPSS version 20.0 software. Now, a prototype version of the questionnaire intended for the purpose of conducting this research project was created via Google Forms and piloted. The link to the survey was distributed via the social media platforms Facebook and Yellow. There were 13 responses, none of whom belong to the study's intended target demographic. After a review of the data obtained from the responses, I revised the questionnaire to the current version. Below is a list. The following is a list of the changes in the reasoning behind them. So first of all, in the original questionnaire, the questions were limited to only examining the influence of gender stereotype antecedents, male, female, and neutral, and formal or informal context. However, antecedents consist of many more attributes than just gender stereotypes. Therefore, I decided to include more questions in order to collect data on how other possible facets of antecedents may influence the participants' views on singular day. Those attributes include antecedent types, definite noun phrases, indefinite noun phrases, indefinite pronouns, and quantificational noun phrases, and notional number, singular or plural. Furthermore, the questions examining the influence of antecedents were previously closed text exercises. Participants were presented with 2 sentences before being asked to fill in the gap with a pronoun. For example, when a person is feeling sad, we should do our best to cheer blank up. Well, this type of question did provide me with data on what pronouns do respondents use when referring to a singular and genderless antecedent. It did not contribute data that is relevant enough to my second research questions, which is, does different antecedent types affect EFL learners' view of singular day? Therefore, I decided to change the design of antecedent-related questions. In the new version, participants will be presented with a singular or a series of sentences that uses singular day to refer back to an antecedent. Then, the responders will be asked to rate their agreement to the notion that the sentences are grammatically correct on a 5-point Likert scale. Additionally, for the questions that involve asking participants whether formal and informal context influence their views regarding singular genderless pronouns, the prototype version of the questionnaire only provided 3 responses: yes, no, and maybe. Data resulting from the limited options of this question did not significantly contribute to establishing patterns or trends in the respondents' viewpoints. Thus, for the new version of this question, participants will be asked to rate their agreement to the statement formal and informal context influence their views regarding singular genderless pronouns on a 5-point Likert scale. Lastly, in the prototype questionnaire, there was a question that required the participants to write a paragraph or a few sentences answering the question, describe the perfect employee. What does a perfect employee do? What are the characteristics of a perfect employee? The prompt was worded in a manner that encouraged participants to refer back to a singular genderless antecedent, which is the employee. There were 2 main problems with the data produced by this query. First, very few of the participants chose to answer this question, only 4 out of 13, which renders the dataset unreliable. Secondly, some of the responses to the questions do not use pronouns at all, consisting of only adjectives. For example, patient, hardworking, studious. I was unable to discern if in these responses the writers wanted to avoid pronoun use when referring to an epicene antecedent, or if they personally prefer to only use short descriptions in response to long-form questions. So let's move on to the next part. Expected outcomes. In addition to providing accurate data on the university students' views on singular day, the results of this study will answer the following research questions. How do EFL learners view the concept of singular day? Does different antecedents affect EFL learners' views of singular day? Does formal and informal context affect EFL learners' view of singular day? For the first question, I will investigate the data from the questionnaires by dividing it into two groups. The first group contains data from questions 18 and 19 and will be used to determine how many of the participants does and does not know of singular day and the source of this knowledge on this particular use of pronoun. As for the second group, it will contain data from the first 14 questions, which mainly relates to grammaticality of sentences containing singular day, and questions number 15 and 16, which directly ask what epicene pronoun to use in formal and informal contexts. This will allow me to ascertain how students view the grammatical validity of sentences containing singular day. Then I will cross-examine the findings of both groups of data to find out how many, if any, of the participants know of the concept of singular day before, but view the use of singular day as ungrammatical. In regards to the second question, data from the first 14 questions will be used to determine the effects of antecedent types, notional number, and gender stereotypes on participants' perception of singular day. The findings reviewed will be used to compare and contrast with similar studies, such as Stormbaum 2019, which examined the influence of various factors relating to antecedent on epicene pronoun use among L1 and L2 English speakers. As for the third question, data from questions relating to formal and informal contexts will be examined. Namely, those are questions number 15, 16, and 17. Afterwards, I will reference studies that also explore the influence of context on the perception and use of singular day. For example, while Scotti 2016 study did not specifically focus on formal and informal context in the conclusions, the findings of his article contains clear data on the influence of context on the use of singular day. In particular, he found that participants in his study who preferred not to use singular day cited reasons such as finding singular day grammatically incorrect and thus more appropriate in informal context, and viewing he or she constructions to be more formal and perceiving singular day to be confusing because the pronoun is more often used to refer to multiple subjects. So that's the end of my presentation. This is a list of my references. Thank you for watching and listening. Bye.